Good evening, Todd.
Hey Thea, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. How about yourself?
It's been a long day. Anytime I'm in Illinois and the greater Chicago area, it's just it's not good.
Is it because of traffic?
That, but no, the way they're dealing with the COVID thing over here, it's I'm not saying that there isn't a problem and that there isn't something out there, but the people here are literally scared to death, and
Wow.
it's totally a different atmosphere that you live in over here. It's people are afraid. You can see it in their face. You walk up to somebody and they shuffle away, and I mean it's just it's not a world I want to live in. Let's say that.
Yeah. Sorry to hear about that. Yeah, it was a long day for me too, just starting back classes today. And so the first couple of days of class is always kind of like filling out process and um, all that good stuff.
Yeah. What's I'm sure masks in the class and do they limit capacity or what's going on with the
Yeah, when they
classes?
say limited capacity, it was like I had a class that traditionally would be 25 students. Now it's 22 students, so it's like,
Yeah. Okay.
so it's like, and, there's the maintenance workers built some dividers, like glass dividers at some of the tables, but not many. So just the normal protocols. And then they just ask people to spray and wipe down when they're leaving the class.
What's the overall feel from the professors and the instructors? Are they looking at this like really, or are they 100% on board with it?
It's hard to say. I haven't really talked to a whole lot of people, but it's one of them things that where you kind of take whatever cards you've been dealt and we kind of roll with it, and so I mean I think about Notre Dame since they're testing,
Well, did you hear that they postponed 2 weeks?
yeah. And so at Bethel, we're not the only people we're testing required testing are athletes. So it's one of them things where it's really hard to get a gauge for any issues unless you're testing. And so it'd be interesting. But I mean, you walking around campus, if you're outdoors, there's the protocols are a little bit lax. It's more so when you're in the buildings and things that nature. And say like for normally they would have chapel on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as a whole campus. Now they're doing it by floors of your dorm. So first floor is Monday, second floor is Wednesday, Friday is third floor.
Oh man, that's too bad. I mean, that was a time that was some of the biggest growth I had at Bethel was during chapels and the things that happened there and what surrounded those times. So that's sad.
Yes, they have a lot of rotation and a lot of I'm not sure how they're doing the dining commons, but I'm assuming there's probably going to be some type of rotation or something like that. I don't know. Like I say, literally today was the first day of class, and then we're live streaming all the classes, but we're not offering it as an option. You still got to come to class, but say if you do get quarantined, you can check out the live stream.
Okay.
Or it's good for athletes, when athletes do a lot of traveling, so they'll be to check out the live stream.
Yep.
But it'd be interesting. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, everyone. Lindsay, Aaron, Karen, iPhone. I didn't see who I think that might have been Keisha. There's Miss Karen. Did you get the flat taken care of?
I'm sitting here. I don't know if they're gonna be able to fix it. So I am at the marathon station in Niles.
Do you need a ride somewhere? Do you need me to come get you?
I'm gonna call my daughter. So I just want to jump on and say, y'all, I gotta get that done. How's everybody doing?
First day of classes, so I got that first day of classes, just
Oh, bless your heart.
But it was good though. No complaints.
Good. So forgive me, I'm gonna try to mute myself so you guys don't hear the drills I'm carrying on. I hope they can get me in.
Hey guys, it's Keisha. I'm here. I have to pick my daughter up from work real quick, so I'm not gonna have the video on, and then it's gonna kind of probably go in and out with the bad service. So I just wanted to make sure I was on here. I'm here though, okay?
Welcome. I know I just got a message from Cam. He'll be on too. He just ran a few minutes late, and then Preston said he probably won't be on. Didn't hear anything from Derek, but we'll see.
Oh, Derek said last week he was done. That might have been his
he
last
did
week.
say that. That's right. Yeah. He
Yeah.
said that. I look tired. Cut back in my eyes. I need some rest. I don't know. Allergies or something. Here's Cam. Well, I think we have everyone who we're going to have for tonight. With no Preston, no Dan, no Derek. Yeah, I think we're rocking and rolling. So do y'all mind, does Dan normally open up in prayer? Because if not, I like to open up in prayer, if that's cool with y'all. All right. Heavenly Father, we just thank you once again for your grace and your mercy, the fact that you preserved each and every one of us. We don't take for granted just the awesome opportunity we've had through this book club and meeting new people and building with already established relationships. I pray more than anything we've glorified you through our conversations, through our actions, through our interactions. Pray you continue to have your way in this group, that even after the book club is disbanded, Lord, that we would continue to seek out each other, continue to take advantage of opportunities to grow and to glorify you in all that we do. Be with us this evening. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So first off, I'd like to welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to stand in for our dear brother Dan, who's done such an excellent job as the moderator slash facilitator slash originator slash all the aiders that he's done in this particular role. So I am not trying to replace Dan. Dan is Dan. He is irreplaceable. So I'm just trying to do my part to keep this ball rolling. And so there will be a lot of stuff that is very similar in our approach. There may be some things that's slightly different. One thing I do want to keep in, I really like the fact how he checks in with everyone. So we're going to check in with everyone. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you the list of the order of tonight's interaction. And I'm just going to basically go by how I see it on the screen. So Todd, you're going to be, well, I'll start us off. Actually, I won't start us off. I'll end us. So Todd, you're going to start us off. Or what I may do is I'll give a prompt and then the question, and then Todd, you start us off as far as the first answer. Then we'll have Lindsay. Then Aaron. Then Karen G. Then Cassie. Then Cam. Then to Keisha. And then Karen West, Miss Karen West. And then I'll conclude. All right, so this is just the check-in. How was your week since last week? Any notable things, highs and lows? Anything you're looking forward to? All that good stuff. So, Brother Todd, you can set us off.
All in all, the week went pretty well. A lot of times I have to judge my week on what I get done at home, because you don't realize how much you lose when you're not home Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. So I have to wrap everything up into Thursday, Friday, and still try to have some family time. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But it was a good week, and we were able to video chat with our new daughter from Spain that's going to be coming over, and she was able to get to the U.S. Embassy in Spain and get everything that she needed. So all those plans are coming together, and she should be here in a couple of weeks. And her and my wife have really started to connect, which is good, because we're technically only a welcome family for her. And then they were going to look for another host family, but I can see the heartstrings being tugged with my wife right now. So it's probably a permanent thing. But we won't know until she gets here and starts the process. But work is going well, and I struggled getting the time in I needed with God this week. So that was that's something that's a challenge for me every week. So that's how my week went.
My week has been going well. I'm trying to even remember the last week or so. Last week was when we had that crazy windstorm, so we were without power for a little bit. But thankful that my parents live by and we were able to stay with them, so we didn't have to be miserable in our house. Yeah, things are going well. Work's going well for the most part. Most of our students have started back at school, and so it's just the new phase of seeing how that works and adjusting, continue on with school. So a pretty steady week, I guess. But yeah, that's a good week, I guess.
So can I just be real with you guys tonight? Do you ever have a day where just people get on your nerves? Work, lots of deadlines coming together all at once, and I don't know, it just seemed like every meeting I had today was, I don't know, things were not going smoothly. So hasn't been the greatest start to the week, but for the most part, things are good. Can't complain. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess I wasn't here last week, so it's been a little while since I've been on a call. So yeah, things are good. I mean, overall work is good. It's just, I don't know, one of those days. So I'll try not to be too sassy or sarcastic today.
I am settling into a new routine, trying to balance several different part-time jobs and my husband in a new job, and finding a norm routine with Colin being home and all of our different comings and goings. Tom, my husband, has some interesting things going on at work, so the upcoming week might be a little stressful, but right now I'm home and it's quiet, and so that's a good thing.
I had a pretty good week. I got back from spending some time with family out of state on Wednesday. So that was some much needed time away from work, because I've been working 12 to 14 hours every day. So just having some time away was really good. But to say that also coming back was pretty rough with work. One of the things that I do is I track the numbers for St. Joseph County for COVID, and run all of the data analysis. And so that just consumes so much of my time. And so it just weighs on you when all the world talks about is COVID, and then that's all that I do at work too. So yeah, but other than that, good.
It's been pretty good for me. Last week for ISI, we had our team night, so it was a busy week for that. And then we were working on cleaning up the building a lot too, so that was good. And then got to hang out with my friends a couple times this weekend. I hadn't seen a couple of them in a while, so that was really, really good, really refreshing. This week, the end of the week, me and my sister, my younger sister, we're going to visit my brother in Chicago. He's a med school student in Chicago, so we're going to visit him and stay with him for the weekend. So I'm super, super excited about that.
My week has been great. I've gotten a lot done with a lot of things I've been having to do. But yeah, it's been a good week until 2 days ago. So, well, 3 days ago. So, but other than that, I've had a good week.
Hey everybody, I don't know how good this Wi-Fi is where I am. I have a spare on now. Hallelujah. So, I didn't know what I do, but I don't know what I ran over. But anyway, it's all good. And but it was a long week, as Cam said. We had a big week last week at Transformation, and so worked a lot of. I'm gonna be like Aaron though. I'm gonna be real nice today. So, so.
You back? Are you back?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I said I'm blessed. Amen.
Yes, for me, pretty good week. You know, had faculty retreat late last week, and then spent the rest of the week meeting with some freshmen from one of my classes. So doing all that freshman orientation type things, games, and meeting with parents and picnics and all that good stuff. And gave a training yesterday for Ivy Tech on. It was interesting because what I gave a training on was implicit bias, but a lot of what I covered was covered in this week's chapter of the book. So I thought that was cool. You know, like, hey, I spoke about that term just yesterday or whatever it was. And so I thought that was cool. And then the day was the first day of classes, and it's my lighter day. Tuesdays and Thursdays is my lighter day. And so tomorrow, because Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I teach 3 classes. So that'll seem real like the real day for me. And so just trying to really get excited, you know, think about teaching or any job you got to get excited about it. You know, if you go in begrudgingly, it just won't go well. So each year we get such a long break, and this year's break seemed longer because we were online towards the end. So just getting back into the swing of things is going to be challenging, but I'm looking forward to just planting a lot of seeds and just having a great semester. So that would be my week. So for our first official question, instead of me asking a specific, I do have some specific questions, and I'm also going to probably utilize some of the ones that Dan had in terms of chapter 9. But let's talk about a general chapter 9 question, because sometimes with these questions, we may cover or we may not cover the thing you really want to get to, the thing that stood out to you. So let's start off with each person maybe talking about what was something that really stood out to you from the chapter, whether it resonated with you, whether it challenged you, whether you say, okay, going forward, here's something that gives me something to think about, or whether it totally turned you off, whatever how you want to approach it. What would be one or even 2 things, because we got time tonight. So 1 or 2 things that you were saying, this really resonated with me and it challenged me going forth to take these things into consideration. And so once again, I'm going to have Todd set us off. Yeah. And by the way, when you see me mute my picture, it's only because I'm eating and I'm trying, not to be super rude. With this food that I picked up from my mama, I was in Michigan City yesterday. And my mama had cooked. So whenever you go home to your mama, you got to get some food. Yeah. Set us off, Todd.
This is not a good week for me to be going first. I was listening to the book today while I was traveling, and I was in traffic and frustrated and angry, and I didn't hear everything that I should have heard. So I'm going to be totally honest that I need to listen to it again to get out of it what I need to get out of it. I'm honestly drawing a blank just because of the day I've had and what's been going on. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be much more of a listener tonight than a talker, and maybe that's a very, very good thing for me. So I need to learn how to do that. So I'm going to leave it at that because I just don't really have something that jumped out at me on this. So sorry, guys.
No, that is great. I mean, it's not great. It's understandable. But we'll make sure we will have some conversations that you don't need the book to enjoy and be a part of. So you will be locked in tonight. We won't forget about you. All right, Sister Lindsay.
I think for me, in the leadership section, when she talked about the extended contact hypothesis, it seems like such common sense, which like almost makes me mad, but also really grateful that I'm just reading about it, because I think it's easy for me, which this is probably like most people, just to like get angry at organizations or churches or whatever groups you're in, to like be frustrated that there's not something that you think should be there. And so just like, once again, another reminder of, okay, I have the platform that I have, and I have, like the Lord has entrusted that to me for this season. And so how am I being an example with that? And how am I living that out? And once again, like that's such a in your face, like I feel like that's such, can be a cliche thing as well, but it's been a really good reminder. And even just to go deeper into it, like, no, this is actually like proven that if you are setting the example, others will follow. So I guess more of a reminder for me to own my corner and stop staring at and comparing and looking at what everybody else is doing, and just be faithful with what the Lord has trusted me with.
I think for me, I'd say the section with the subheader "Creating Equal Status" was pretty important. I mean, I thought this was a really good chapter overall, but that kind of stood out to me. Just I don't know. It's so easy for us to, even when we try to, maybe reach out across cultural boundaries, or to different groups that are different than ours. It's easy to see things through like our own prism. And like what I mean by that is, in that section it talked about like the group of upper middle class white women who were setting up this prayer meeting, but they didn't think through the fact that, okay, we're doing this mid-morning on a Thursday, and it's in our neighborhood. If the group of women from the Hispanic church want to come to this, they've got to, I mean, they're working during that time, they've got to figure out transportation. Like, it's not convenient for them. And so they were seeing it through their own prism. And I do that all the time. I think all of us can probably fall prey to that, of just being in our own little world and seeing things through, our own viewpoint. And I don't know, it was just a good reminder to like, yeah, set things on equal footing, go the extra mile to try to reach out to someone rather than forcing them to come to you.
For me, it was the difference between mattering and marginality, and these 5 points that she uses to point out how someone can feel included or not, and how they can feel pushed out to the margins rather than included. And so that, and then looking through the backpack or the knapsack, and all those different things, those different thoughts, and just the importance of being aware and always trying to be on top of where are you and who are you with, and how are you including everybody, and how does your words or your actions or all of that, how do they affect those around you, and it just how important that is, that we need to stay on top of that. She says in here multiple times, I feel like, that it's hard work and it's a lot of work, and you just got to be mindful of always having that in front of you. And I think that was a great, I want to say reminder, but a great, thing to know and learn and be aware of.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was one of my favorite chapters. Same as you, Erin. I think the creating equal status is really what that section really stuck out to me. Specifically within it, though, 2 different points. I really appreciated how she kind of dove into how well-intended individuals can still have uninformed efforts. And we can be explicitly, I want to make sure I say it right, where you can be your implicit collective actions have to communicate better. So you're being nice explicitly, but your implicit purpose behind it isn't there. And so I think I know, Karen Grant, you've mentioned Austin Brown's book before, but She talks about in her book too, and in an interview that she does with Brene Brown, how she really talks about being nice isn't good enough. And I feel like that also really ties into that piece of when we're talking about situations like this, it can't stop at just being kind, which I liked. And then the other part is kind of like what you're talking about again, Karen, is just the hard work behind it. When she's really diving into how once you're aware of that status and power, it's what you do after you have that knowledge of it, and that hard work that goes into it. So that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, for me, I sent this into the group chat too, so you guys probably already been able to get this, but the invisible knapsack metaphor was like, well, I think it put concrete language to something that I had recognized and heard about and experienced, but to talk about status differential in that way was very powerful to me. And I'll find myself going back to that metaphor often. But then also, yeah, Cassie, kind of what you were just mentioning, how we can have all the people, you know, if you're a majority group and you have a person that would typically be an out-group member, a minority group, come in, you can have every single person say, oh, you're welcome here, and blah, blah, blah. But then the group's norms and rituals and customs and values can tell that person otherwise. I think that hit home because I've seen that past 3 years I was at Indiana Wesleyan. I saw that where it's like, we'll tell students of color, you know, you're welcome here. You know, we want you here. You belong here. And then the customs and values and cultural norms say otherwise. So I find that a lot in this book. In this chapter, maybe more than any other one, Christina Cleveland just keeps putting language, like this incredibly like succinct, concise sociological language, these terms to things that I've noticed before. And I'm so grateful that we're reading this book. It's giving me a lot of language for things that I didn't know how to wrap up like this before.
Keisha, you are next.
I missed the question. I just got in the door running. Yeah. So if you could just tell me the question, I'm so sorry.
Instead of a specific question, the question was there anything in chapter 9 that really resonated with you in terms of, it says, yeah, I agree strongly, or I disagree strongly, or I never really thought about that. So what about the chapter really stood out to you? And you can name one or two things that really stood out to you.
I got it written down at home. So can I get in the house and then can it come back to me?
Oh yes, get in the house.
Please. Okay.
We'll come back to you. So for me, two things. So the overarching thing that stood out to me was when she touched on reconciliation, because for me that's my passion. You know, to me, the diversity is cool. I promote it, but for me, I'm big on, so how do you make diversity be authentic in terms of having reconciled relationships? That's what I've dedicated my life to. So whenever you hear about me and my best friend Ryan, we're normally talking about racial reconciliation and not necessarily diversity, which would be a byproduct of that. And so I thought it was interesting how, and one of the big things Ryan and I we're really big on, and anyone who's big on reconciliation, is this need for acknowledging of the differences and then repenting and turning away from all that stuff. You can't just say from this day forward, let's just go forward, but how do you deal with past issues? And so I thought it was interesting how she spoke briefly about the need for reconciliation, and I got excited. But then a lot of the examples she gave in terms of some of the outreach was more so when you come together, you don't really deal with that past stuff, you just have some common goals going forward. And I think that that's helpful if you want to build relationships. But I think the danger is when you just build from now forward, there's just so much that hasn't been dealt with. And it would be one thing if that past stuff was truly in the past. But since those past things have residual effects, and some of what we call the past was yesterday, not 10 years ago. And so it's an ongoing past. I think it's important that we deal with both ends. And then lastly, when she talked about anytime I hear these conversations and it's couched with privilege, I have an interesting take on that, because to me, I believe privilege is probably the wrong wording to describe what has created this gap, especially you talk about a racial gap and a gender gap. I don't think privilege was the driving force that created that gap. I think oppression, some form of oppression, probably created the gap. And I think the reason why it's an important distinction is when we go to figure out how to undo it all, how do we close the gap? Well, the key to closing the gap is what's going to be your understanding of how the gap was created. So if you think the gap was created by privilege, you're going to ask those with privilege to give up their privilege in order to close the gap. I don't think people giving up privilege is going to close the gap. I think people not oppressing other people, and allowing them to rise up would close the gap. Because say if there was a such thing, 'cause I don't believe in the phrase white privilege. I'm not a big fan of that. But say if white privilege existed and I told someone white to give up their privilege, that wouldn't make my life any better as a black person. It would just probably make their life a little bit worse, and my goal isn't to make someone's life worse, it's to have me have the opportunity to have a better life. So just some thoughts on that chapter thus far. So for this round, let's deal with some of the things that people have put forth thus far in chapter 9, and let's put some meat on those bones. So this will be your opportunity to either give some more clarification to what you spoke about, to chime in on what someone else spoke about, maybe in agreement or in disagreement, to see how we can unpack some of these things. Because I think ultimately what we're trying to do now is, as we're coming towards the tail end of our book group, we're going to be to say we read this book and we took some notes and had some great conversations. But the key is, how do we take all this meat that we've digested and actually put it to good use? And so who would like to, we're going to go back in the circle and unpack maybe some of the topics that other people have brought up, whether it was the leadership stuff. Well, I'm really, okay, let's do it this way. That way we have some focus. Since one of the ones that several of you spoke about was this equal status. So the notion that it's not simply good enough to come together with good intentions, do these work projects, do these common goal projects. It's going to be important to have equal status. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think people fail to either realize it or execute that? How is it easy to get off track? And what do you think would be some best practices in terms of trying to create an equal status, especially thinking about from a systemic standpoint? None of us may have the power within ourselves to change the system. But what could we do on a relational level or a small group level in terms of making sure there's equal status when we have these type of interactions?
Well, going from somebody that, again, I apologize again for, this is the first week I have not been able to really dive into the book and get 100% out of it. But I'm going to go off of what you just said there in equal status, and based on the groups that I've dealt with and been involved with, and not even just groups, but family members and people within my own family. I think a lot of the times equal status is, how do I want to say this? The people that feel like they're not equal status are driving themselves down. It's not the people that I don't want to put it in black and white terms, like black versus white. Or I think it would be easier to say poor versus wealthy. I'm going to use a poor versus wealthy status. So I think if you're in a group setting and you're working together and you're doing things as a group, somebody that doesn't have money or doesn't have as much money feels like they're not worth what the other person that has money is. And because of that, they hold themselves back. And I don't know how to change that how do you approach that scenario to give them the confidence to feel that they're as worthy as everybody else in the group. I don't know if that's the direction you're going for on that, Theo, but that's what I feel like when I'm in a group setting where I can see a disunity in the group where somebody feels like they don't fit in. And a lot of times I feel it's like they put themselves in that position that they don't fit in. It's not that the rest of them aren't accepting them. So I don't know if that's the way you're going with that, but that's how I feel when I'm in those settings.
Yes, so for clarification, I'm not going in any direction. The key is whatever y'all bring to the table, that's what we bring into the table. And so I don't have a direction like, well, that's not the direction I was thinking. No, I put it out there, and whatever direction you go in, that direction is valid for this particular conversation. So that's great. We thank you for that contribution.
I guess where my mind first goes, which I don't always love this because I don't ever want to try and play like the victim card. But where I've seen it, I think it's easier to see it in your own lives, like when you've been the one that's been unequal or whatnot. I just know, like, from my own experience in working within a church, so I'm one of two high school pastors, and the other one is a male. And so there have been many times, not even when he has specifically done something, like it's not even him, it's more of just like the fact that he is a male and in this position. There have been a lot of times where if we're both together or something, he's the one that people go and talk to, or people ask him questions, or if we're in meetings, like he's the one that is always looked to answer questions. And I think that's not necessarily, I'm not blaming him whatsoever. It's what our society has known, and it's just the community that we have lived in. And so it's, for me, understanding, I guess from when I started to where I am now, I wouldn't say we were creating equal status, more of just like creating equal opportunity, I guess. But all that to say, for me to have been the one maybe experiencing that in that situation, I think it has, I would like to say in a lot of other situations, but I know I'm still blind to a lot. It has allowed me to see in other situations who are those people that do feel like maybe they aren't feeling equal or empowered to do something. And I know for me, whenever a situation like that happened, I know that it wasn't directed at me, but yet something internally happened where I was like, oh, maybe they shouldn't ask me. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Just like a lot of internal battling going on. And so for me, I think because that's how I experience it, and I know everybody would experience that differently. but I try to be more quick, just like make sure everybody's feeling okay. And then if I see somebody even somewhat questioning themselves, calling it out right then and there, and being like, no, you are capable of that. Like just paying attention to maybe more of like the negative self-talk. That's one small way that I have learned, but I'm also excited to hear everything that you all say, because that's just one small example from my experience.
I think that's a really good example, though. Like, thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. That's frustrating that stuff happens, but yeah, I think that's a good perspective to share. I guess I would just, I don't have a whole lot to add, maybe, but I do think it is not all on the person in the lower setting to try to feel like they fit in. I think it is partly on, lower and higher might not be the words to describe it, but yeah, the person in the group that, yeah, is maybe in more of a position of power, or I don't know. I think, I mean, I think the Bible kind of gives us, perspective on this too, of as Christians throughout the Bible, we're called to humble ourselves. And so I just think in these types of situations, it's just, I mean, honestly, it's exactly like you put it, Lindsay. I really don't have to add anything to what you said. It's going out of your way to make people feel welcome, and yeah, to just make sure that everybody has that equal seat at the table. And then what happens from there, that's what happens from there. But everybody should have that equal setting. So yeah, I don't need to keep going on. I think that's what we're trying to do.
And I'll just add to any of that. I think not just a seat at a table, but I think it's important that everybody have a voice at the table, and that you include everybody in, if it's conversation or if it's making plans for something, because a lot of times it's easy to assume how things should be done or how you want things to be done, and you don't take into consideration other people's ideas or gifts or talents that they bring to the table too. And so, or even, culture or style or all those things, or even needs, what's needed to be done. I think it's important to let everybody speak into all of that.
Aaron, I feel like the words maybe would be like my majority and minority of whatever situation you're in. And even with all of this conversation, Linz, when you were talking, it brought me back to the book on page 171, when she's ending this section, and she says, in this case, a commitment to equal status often means going against societal norms by refusing to allow the dominant cultural group to dominate the cross-cultural situation, and intentionally giving the historically subjected group the power and resources to exert influence. And so I think when I think of best practices, I guess when whatever purpose of whatever group is coming together, really evaluating of the group, what is the majority, and really raising the voice of the minority of that group. And that voice, I think, is important, is kind of what I thought. But I'm also very appreciative of that example. And I even thought of the example too from the book with the white moms and the Hispanic moms. And I think it's just adjusting your mindset and your lens of how can we be more inclusive, and not just welcoming, but really utilizing the voices that are part of the group. So.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of similar thoughts to what's been shared. I think I tend to think of it in, when we're talking about this subject, I tend to think of it with churches, just because that's what I've been studying, and where I've seen this the most in creating equal status. I think probably one of the most helpful tools I found with this And Theo, I wouldn't be surprised if you're familiar with this because it comes from the Evangelical Covenant Church. But it's the fivefold test of multi-ethnic representation in a church. So the fivefold, they all start with P's. First is population, then participation, power, pace setting, and purposeful narrative. So basically what that's saying is population is just the first step. So you could have a church that's, you know, completely evenly balanced, 50% black, 50% white. But if there's not equal participation, if there's not equal representation in leadership and power, if they don't have equal and balanced say as far as how the church sets its pace and sets its vision and passes on its legacy, then all you have is token diversity. All you have is optics. And like sadly, I think I see that a lot out of a lot of predominantly white churches, is they settle for population. And that's just, it's sad to me. But I know at the same time, like, even individually, I've been guilty of that. Because as much as I hate to admit it, optics on an individual level are important to me. How other people see me is important to me. And so, you know, gotta get the log out of my own eye first, I guess.
Okay, so I'll go back to the first question, the first part. One thing that stuck out was I wrote down like a couple keywords, and it was support vision, but not live vision. That, and it I know it was more to it. It's more to be said about it. Like, but that was basically the takeaway was, people, we all will support a vision of diverse stuff and say we support it, but we don't live the vision. Like, no, some people are afraid to step outside of their neighborhood or their world to see another world. I'm talking about here, like, you know, where we all presently are. And I'm guilty of that. Some places you're just not comfortable going, and we all understand that, but we're not comfortable with going because of the, you know, the power thing, and if I go there, something's gonna happen to me. We do that a lot, and I'm absolutely guilty of doing that myself. And so doing a lot of things, I have been stepping outside of my comfort zone here lately. Well, I always step outside my comfort zone. Who am I kidding? But I step outside my comfort zone a lot. And I feel like it's the only way that we're going to learn to get along and learn to do things that need to be done. And I don't want to be like confrontational, and I don't want anyone to feel like I'm just, and that's crazy because I don't want nobody to feel like, but if we don't learn our areas, our cultures, other people's cultures, other people's areas, other people's churches, if we don't start to learn all this stuff and have an open ear, and instead of being defensive all the time, like, we're never going to get it. We're all going to stay in the spot, and it's always going to be a disunity in Christ. It will forever be that if you feel like, and myself included, and not just the black and white thing, I'm talking about a humanity thing. If we don't step outside, like she's saying in this book, if we don't step outside of our circles, our bubbles, our neighborhoods, and step into another neighborhood and be open to learn, not step in a neighborhood and be defensive, or step into a neighborhood and act like you know it all, but step into somewhere and be open to learning. We're never going to come out. It's always going to be a disunity. It's going to be a big bowl of chaos. That's just my take over everything we just talked about.
So for me, I just jot down a couple of notes in terms of some of the things you all highlighted that resonated with me. So I think it's important. One of my favorite books of all time, and this is coming from someone who does not like to read, but one of my favorite books of all time is this book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Very old school book written by a Brazilian author by the name of Pablo Freire. And one of the things he wrote about, and he was writing about the educational system and how teachers normally teach where it's almost like we deposit something to someone, they receive it, and there's not a lot of give and take interaction. And he was speaking about charity, and a lot of what he said kind of resonates to what this author was talking about in terms of the well-intentionality of outreach. Well-intentioned, but how it can have some unintentional drawbacks if the people we're reaching out to have not been considered in terms of their value. So there's this relationship of we're going to give to you. We know what you need. We know how to give it to you, versus allowing them the opportunity to express who they are and what they need and go from there. And one thing Pablo Freire was saying, that charity itself, as admirable as it can be, also has a darker side to it in terms of charity necessitates that there's always a need that never fully gets met. So it's not like, so the age-old adage, like the proverb of teaching a man to fish versus, or giving a man a fish versus teaching a man to fish. And so charity would like be giving that man a fish, so that versus teaching the person how to fish. And so with charity, the charitable giver rarely ever fully meets the need. They meet it temporarily, and it necessitates that you eventually come back to them. And some of us who are charitable, if we're honest, there's a part of us that kind of it strokes our ego in a way to know that someone is dependent upon us. So, now if you're charitable privately, different, but think about the public charities. So like, someone posts on Facebook, here's a video of me giving food to the homeless. Like, did you have your camera ready? Did you see the homeless person and then pull out your camera? Did you pull out the camera and go look for a homeless person? I mean, it's like, it kind of defeats some of the purpose. And I think the author was kind of touching on that we can have some very well-intentioned outreach that could have some unintentional drawbacks when we set out to value the person, but we don't fully value them the way we could. So I think about at Bethel, when we were starting to have conversations about celebrating diverse cultures and things of that nature, one of the issues that always comes up is like, say, like the food in the cafeteria, or maybe music in the chapel. Both of them being pretty homogenous in terms of not very diverse. So let's say if we're talking about food, they would figure out, okay, let's start to have some dishes that celebrate other cultures. So maybe one of the things they do, there's a particular type of chicken or a type of cooking called jerking from Jamaica. It's a spicier food, like jerk chicken, but when they cook jerk chicken in the cafeteria, they break so many of the rules in terms of, one, they don't cook it on a grill. So it's like baked in an oven, which you would never see jerk chicken in Jamaica baked in the oven. It's always going to be on a grill. They always have, they always do like boneless chicken breast sometimes, and you will never see boneless meat in Jamaica, you know, because the bone is part of it. And it doesn't taste like jerk. Now I will say it tastes good. Whatever it tastes good, it's just not jerk chicken. I say all to say this: they get an A for effort, wanting to honor this other culture. But what would really honor the other culture, instead of having someone white or even someone black, because oftentimes at Bethel, through Sodexo, some of the cooks are black, but they're Black Americans. And the average Black American doesn't know how to jerk chicken, you know, and so they get an A for effort, but our students who are from the Caribbean be like, this ain't jerk chicken. And so they get excited when they see the name. Ooh, they got jerk chicken in the cafeteria today, and they get super excited that people thinking about them. But then when they taste it, they're like, well, were you really thinking about me? Because if you really thought about me, you would have put forth the effort to do it the right way. And that may mean that you allow someone from Jamaica, which they do every now and then, they would have people come into the kitchen and show them how to cook it or cook it. That's real value. One part of value is me cooking this dish, cooking your favorite dish for you. A next level of value will be allowing you into my kitchen to show me how to cook it, or you cook it. And so I think that's very important in terms of not only inviting people to the table, but sometimes allowing them to be a part of making the table, setting the table, you know, having voice in the whole process. I try to do that as a professor. Or one of my colleagues, he'll invite me to come speak to one of his classes, and I say I never want to come prepared with a prepared speech. Instead, have students ask me questions on the spot, and I'll answer those questions. That way, each student, if they so choose to take advantage of it, can have opportunity to have me talk about the things they want to hear versus me presuming that I know what they want to hear. All right, so let's shift focus. Another one of the topics that came up, several of you talked about being welcoming, and one of my good friends, my brothers, he had one of the most profound quotes in terms of the institution we were at. We were talking about Bethel, so some of you know Bethel. He was saying that Bethel is very inviting but not very welcoming, and he was talking about in terms of diversity. And not racial diversity, gender, diversity of thought. Maybe you come as a non-believer to this Christian college. Very inviting, but not very welcoming. And what he meant by that, because some people think it's semantics, what's the difference? So he was saying that Bethel does a great job of getting you there. The promo, the branding, all are, come on. And you get there, but they didn't do a good job of keeping you there in terms of making you feel at home once you were there. So let's talk about that concept. In what ways do you think cross-culturally, whether we're talking about gender, religion, race, do you think that there's a difference? Do you think there's something to that in terms of inviting, so maybe having the event, but then having the event not play out the way you thought in terms of people feeling empowered while we're there? Or inviting someone to your, how many of you ever invited someone to your home and say, make yourself at home? You know, we all say that. None of us really mean it truly. I mean, if we're honest, no one really wants people to make, oh, for real? Okay, they be in our fridge. They be, you know, like, you know, normally there's caveats. Make yourself at home, and then we have a laundry list of things they can't do. And so let's talk about that. The difference between being inviting and being welcoming in terms of getting people there, but also letting them feel at home once they're there.
I like this question because I think there is a huge difference between being inviting and being welcoming. But I don't always think it's the fault of the person that's doing the inviting or supposed to be welcoming. I think I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm very inviting. We've hosted how many exchange students? We've had, I don't know how many people have, literally hundreds people have stayed at our house because they needed someplace. I'm very inviting, but when they get there, I can't say that I'm welcoming because of my personality and how people perceive me. I'm loud. I'm vocal about my opinion. But to me, if I'm going to somebody else's house and they were like that with me, that would be welcoming to me. That would be inviting and welcoming. So I really think it's got to be it's really hard to pinpoint how those two are very different. It's personality based on how each person takes the other person. Because I'll use another example. Our exchange student Christina, she called me because she knows that I'm a Republican. I like President Trump, and I think President Trump is a lot like me. A lot of people don't see him as inviting or welcoming. I do. He's blunt, he's bold, he gets to the point, and that's where it stops. And to me, that's inviting and welcoming, where a lot of people don't see that. But you can see the love that he has for his grandkids, for his family. You can see that, whether you want to see it or not, it's there. I can see it. But people would look at me at the same way. They would look at me and just like they look at Trump, because I'm bold, I'm to the point, I get there, and people may not necessarily see my heart, but my heart is with every person that's ever been at our house, with every kid that's ever lived in our house. My heart is with them, but they might not see it. So huge difference between inviting and welcoming, but it really depends on the personality of each individual and how they see it.
I really like this question. I think there are so many things in conversations that could be, I think conversations could go a lot smoother if people would just define all of their words. It'd be a lot longer of a conversation, but so I guess for me, my first thought is like, okay, going into it, understanding people have different expectations of what inviting looks like, and what welcoming looks like. I'll just keep using my personal example or life, I guess, because that's all that I can really speak to. When I started on staff at NMC, they were inviting, like they said, we desire to have a male and female pastoral position for our student ministries. Like that, it is an invitation. They acknowledged it. The expectation was there. And so like for me, even going into that, maybe knowing there might be frustrations, I don't know. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I had to go in with so much grace and just extending grace, receiving grace, because like everybody's at a place where they haven't been before. So being able to give that grace and not just get frustrated at the first moment. But also like when you are invited into a place, it's so important to, on both ends, build that relationship of trust. Because I was even thinking back to my last answer, and I wish that I would have added in, but that's fine, I'll add it in now, that a lot has changed because I have voiced my thoughts and my opinions and have said many times things like, hey, this happened. I know that it may not have been meant to be this way, but this is how I perceived it, and I just want you to know. Those conversations happen all the time, but they only have happened not because I'm like righteous anger and super bold, because I'm not that person. Those conversations have only happened because that trust has been there, and because I know those people are for me, and they have said, hey, I want you at the table. I need you to teach me because I'm unaware in this area. And so it is a give and take, but there's so much grace and so much, honestly, just grace needs to be extended in all areas, for it to be an inviting atmosphere. But I feel like the trust is what allows it to become welcoming. I don't know. This is a good question though. I'm excited to hear everybody.
Yeah, I would say think that part of the difference maybe is in like our words versus our actions, right? So like you invite somebody to your house or whatever, to an event, like that's one thing to offer that invitation, but for them to get there and to like be around you and to experience, being at your home, for them to see you in action is a completely different thing, I guess is what I'm getting at. So you can kind of give lip service and still be inviting, on a surface level, I feel like, but no one's going to feel welcoming if that action doesn't follow it up. And Todd, I think you gave us a really good foundation for maybe a definition of what we're trying to get at, because I do think it is very personality based. I think that's a great insight into this. What I would add to that maybe is that, and I'm going to dive back into the days of being in class under Dr. Theo Williams here, of communications classes. Communication is a two-way street, right? If you talk at somebody, that doesn't mean communication has happened. The person might not get what you're trying to communicate to them. There has to be a two-way interaction there. And so I guess what I mean by saying that is, yes, I think it's very much based on people's personalities, but we can't expect that they are just gonna let us in on their personality, right? That they're just gonna project that to us. Like we've gotta open up that two-way street for them and make them feel comfortable to kind of share their personality with us. So we can figure out, okay, yeah, how do they wanna join in this interaction? So I just wanted to say, Todd, I think that's a very helpful starting point. I think we've got to then take that and get to a place where there's a two-way interaction happening there, so that people, I think welcoming is about people feeling comfortable that they can share their personality with us and that we're going to accept it.
I have seen this played out in the church, between children and adults. I've heard many times we want children in the services with us. We want to worship together. We think it's important for families to worship together and kids be a part of all that. But yet they don't like when they make noise or they're loud or they talk or, those kinds of things. And so that's, they say they want them there, but parents don't necessarily feel like their kids are really welcome there. So I have seen that play out. I've seen single parents be said to be a priority, and we want to reach out to single moms and that kind of thing, but don't offer childcare for events or have resources to help women or men, whatever single parenting looks like for them. So I see lots of wants of being welcoming or inviting, I guess, but then not the work put into making it actually work and be of value and that added layer of actually welcoming them into the family. And that's always frustrating.
Yeah, a lot of this is really good. I love hearing everyone's responses too. I think I even so I'm a small group leader at Napanee Missionary Church, and I even thought of it in this way within, so I have a couple different friend groups within the small group. And then I have a couple that don't really fit in to either friend group. And so I think of it in that way of outside of small group gatherings, I would encourage the friend groups, hey, you guys should invite those other girls, and really bring them in and create a space, because they don't necessarily automatically fit into your friend group. And while that invitation was there, how that girl felt when hanging out with those girls wasn't welcomed. The invitation was there, but the actions of the girls, once the one girl was there, didn't match that welcoming. So I guess that was the first thing that I thought of, and thinking of our actions behind after we put out that invitation and following through with that. I just think action is just a big piece of it, and being really intentional. And I go back to even, Karen, what you said previously, really being intentional in the thought process internally of when you're interacting. And yeah, just the intentionality of it. Yeah.
I love the metaphor of saying, make yourself at home, because whenever anybody says that to me, I'm like, that's in one ear, out the other. That doesn't mean anything. It's like, I would rather you give me a list of like, help yourself to what's in the fridge, like there's this drink, keep your hands off this stuff, and you can say here. I would rather them do all of that. And I think that translates, especially like to the church. I think there's a lot of things that we take for granted, and there's these norms that we have. I'll speak from my experience in like predominantly white churches. There's these norms that we have in church of like, okay, when the pastor says greet somebody, you're going to turn around, you're going to shake 3 people's hands, you're going to say good morning, you're not going to say anything else, and then you're going to sit down right after that. And it's like, there's these things that are like, we take for granted of like, this is what you do this is how you act in worship. You might raise one hand, but you raise 2 hands, that's too much. This type of stuff is like, come on, man. There's so many unspoken rules that I think we take for granted. And then it's like, we don't realize it until we're on the other side of it. I know I haven't realized it until I was on the other side of it. One of the probably the most vivid example I have of that is I went to a concert in Chicago with my brother. It was a rapper named Toby Nwigwe, and his fan base is predominantly black. Of the 300-400 people in the room, me and my brother were probably 2 of only like maybe 10 white people there. And it wouldn't have been, because we know Toby's music front and back, but he was having problems getting his sound stuff started. So the DJ's just playing all these songs while we're waiting for Toby to come out. And me and my brother were like not knowing many of these songs, but almost every single black person in the room, they were getting down. Like they knew all the songs, and we're just kind of standing there like trying not to look awkward. But that was like a moment where I realized, I was like, dang, I don't know the norms of this group, and I feel out of place. Nobody there was explicitly telling me you're out of place or you're not welcome here. But because I didn't know the norms of the group, I felt very, very, very out of place. So that was just one time where I got the script flipped on me, and it was such a powerful experience, because it was like, dang, that's probably how a person of a minority group feels when they walk into my church. And so that was like, that was a smack in the face.
I'm like really taking in what everyone is saying. I had a therapy session today, so I'm trying to process. So I'm like getting lost in everybody's conversation. I think what I said earlier is like the simplest way when you are if you invite someone over and you tell them, I mean, anywhere, any gathering anywhere, and you tell them, make yourself at home, or you want them to feel welcomed in, like, and then it's like this group of girls or this group of people, they said we can come, and then we come, and then everybody's giving us the cold shoulder. So you really weren't inviting me. I mean, you invited me because it was politically correct at that time, or that was just the right thing to do. But when you, I mean, and this is just to me, if I'm invited somewhere and I don't see you, or you're over here talking with them, or you're making me feel unwelcome, I'm leaving. Because obviously you didn't do, the invite was not sincere. You know what I mean, if that makes any sense. And so going into different churches, and that has a lot to do with myself going into a lot of different churches. It's been so many that you go into, and they're so rude. Like, or the people are just taught, oh, she's got on pants, she's got on like, and I'm sitting there like, dude, I was invited in here to talk. This was a welcoming place, and y'all not welcoming at all, and you know it. Like, you cannot tell, a person knows when you're genuine. You know what I mean? And if you're trying to be open and understanding, like we've all been, the majority of us have been somewhere or done something that it was uncomfortable. And so for me, I don't understand, like, if I invite you over to my house or I invite you somewhere with me, I'm going to make sure that you feel welcome. Cam, while you sit standing around all them and they all know the songs and everything, I'm the one will come up and grab you and be like, come on, we finna dance. I know you ain't got no rhythm right now, but I'm gonna help you get some. So come on. You know, like it's so, to me, it's just that simple. And why does it have to be so difficult? You know what I mean? Like, don't invite me somewhere and you really don't want me to come. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna feel a kind of way. I don't care. I mean, I can go do something else. You know what I'm saying? My time is valuable to me. And so, like, if we're trying to get unity in this thing, why would you be you know yourself? You know what I mean? Everybody knows themselves. And sometimes you can go somewhere and somebody is so busy and they're running all over the place, but they're going to make sure they come and say something to you if they really wanted you there. I have been in places where it was 100 or to 200 people, and the person that invited me made sure they came and said something to me. Is it anything? How are you doing? Oh, I'm so glad to see you here. You know what I mean? It's so simple to make people feel invited. But it's even, I guess, easier, people that are just plain out mean and rude, to make you feel like you're not invited.
Hi,
So I was going to let you know, Miss Karen, what we're doing. You missed the several rounds, but this particular round we were on, one of the reoccurring themes that was coming up in our earlier dialogue was that sometimes we have good intentions when we invite people or when we extend ourselves to people relationally through events, but the event itself or the interaction itself may not line up with the good intentions in terms of the execution of it. And I was saying that one of my good friends once said, in terms of an institution, was saying this institution is very inviting, but not very welcoming. In other words, they know how to get you here, but once you're there, they didn't do a good job of making you feel whole, value, and things of that nature. And so the question was, do you think that that's just semantics, or do you think there's a difference between inviting and welcoming? Why does it not work out well sometimes? And what do you think could be some best practices to make people not only feel invited, but to also feel welcome once they're there?
So are you talking about just in general or church setting, when people do church settings?
In any cross-cultural interaction, if you had the desire to say, I'm going to do something nice for this person, I'm going to extend myself, but so A for effort, but the execution didn't turn out well because although you extended yourself, you didn't take that person into consideration in some of the planning, so maybe you invite them over for dinner, but you cooked your favorite meal.
Right.
And it may not even be something they eat. And so why does that go wrong? And what do you think we could do to help minimize some of that way people feel both invited and welcomed a longer term?
Okay. Yeah, you are right. The key word you're saying is just plan. You have to step out of yourself and look toward the people and the event and the result you're looking for. So you have to prepare for a result. You'll get what you get, and you better not throw a fit, because because you have to plan, and you have to look deeper, and it's hard. I was listening to Todd earlier, and now I just want to say, Todd, I don't know how you was doing all that driving earlier times, and you was just doing so good. You were just keeping up. I couldn't do that. I was trying to concentrate with a donut on, but so I was like, Todd is bad. So he got this. But anyway, yeah, you just have to really, really plan. And I just thought about the exchange student, or your daughter. You don't even call her exchange student, your daughter. You have to host someone in your home from a different country. You have to really be thinking. You got to think a lot because there's so many barriers, and you're trying to have people feel comfortable, and you want them to feel welcome. So you just have to plan and have a lot of thought, and really just look past yourself and think, if the shoe was on the other foot. Okay, all right, let me think about this. If it was me, so I'm thinking very intentionality. I'm thinking intentionality.
Intentionality is a great word. So I have a few thoughts. First, so to me, one of the most simplest things where we can be inviting and not welcoming, or where it doesn't go wrong, or something simple we could do to make it go right, is in terms of food. So I think about how food is such a valuable part of so many different cultures. And it's a valuable part of fellowship, breaking bread biblically. So we were at a picnic the other day. So once again, it was at Bethel, and a lot of the freshmen, and it's kind of like a welcome to back to school picnic. This was yesterday, I think. I invited my wife. My wife wanted to come meet some of my students, and they had pulled pork, pulled pork sandwiches, and then sides. And I don't eat pork. My wife doesn't eat pork for the most part. There's several people who may not eat pork, or whatever it may be. And she was like, so what's the other option? I was like, that's it. You either pork or you don't eat, so we didn't eat, which is no big deal. But part of the frustration was the whole idea of the picnic was to welcome people to the school. So we think it's the small things. If we invite someone over to our house for dinner, the first conversation we're having is, do you have any dietary restrictions or things you don't eat? Or what's your favorite foods? We're going to try to negotiate a plan that works well for our guests. Because my wife and I, we're going to be all right because it's our crib. We know what we can eat at our crib. What we don't want to have is a guest come over and they can't eat the thing that we cooked. That defeats the whole purpose of inviting them over to the house. And when people invite us over for dinner, and we have a lot of people who invite us over for dinner, they love to have us over for dinner, we right off the bat be like, well, just to let you know, it's going to be very difficult for us all to eat the same food. Because here's what I don't eat, here's what my wife, but we let them know that conversations, and we may decide to go out and bring something in, or bring our own to supplement or whatever, but it's good to have that conversation up front. I was trying to find in the book when she was talking about how we sometimes go to our defaults. I thought I had, in this chapter, I thought I had underlined it, I couldn't find it, but she was talking about how oftentimes we may think outside of ourselves initially, the inviting part. But most long-term relationships, we're going to go back to our defaults. And so think about in all the relationships we've all been in, and we're all guilty of this probably, unless it's just me, or even early dating relationships. And we put on our best face, our best version of ourselves. Well, eventually you're going to default to who you really are. You know, so hopefully you're a good person, but you're gonna always go back to your default. You get outside your comfort zone, and you're intentional about getting outside your comfort zone. But as you get more comfortable and more relaxed, we're gonna snap back to whatever our comfort zone is. It's just human nature. And so the way I use a quote with one of my good friends about the welcoming and inviting, another one of my brothers, so Ryan, so some of you know Ryan, he had one of the dopest quotes ever, I thought, too. And I always butcher the quote, but in essence, what he was saying is that Christ not only deals with our faults, he also sometimes deals with our defaults. And I thought that was so profound in terms of, yeah, we know our faults. We know the things that are sinful. We know the things we should not be doing. You shouldn't be racist. You shouldn't be sexist. Those are easier to deal with. But sometimes it's our defaults that are difficult when we are trying to do the right thing, but we default back to some of our preconceived notions, our comfort zones, and things of that nature. And then lastly, all I wanted to talk about in terms of this particular question was, and this book just happened to be here. I got all these communication books, and this one just happened to be at this desk. It says Techniques in Close Reading. Techniques in Close Reading. And this was a book I had to read in my PhD program. And the whole premise of this book is it teaches you how to read between the lines, to really read introspectively. And so what one example may be, if you see a sign and some of the print on the sign is in a large font, and then there's some print on the sign that's in a smaller font. Now, in some ways, everything that's on the sign should be viewed as important because it's on the sign for a reason. But we know based upon size that it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that that which is in the larger font is more important than that which is in the smaller font. That makes sense. So what this close reading says, you don't just read what's on the sign, you look deeper. What does the font say? What does the color scheme say? All those things is part of the message. So with that, I want to go to this next question, this close reading. How yes, I read the sign, but the larger font makes that seem more important than the small. So what it speaks to is, do we do a close reading in terms of when we try to extend ourselves cross-culturally? In terms of, and it would be tedious, but let's say we were planning an event and we want to reach out to whatever this other culture. What would be some of the questions we would have to ask ourselves? So like we designed this event and we don't take the culture into consideration at first. We got this event sign. It's designed. And then if we went down this checklist and say, okay, the food has been taken care of. And then we asked ourselves, okay, based upon this menu, based upon this group that we're reaching out to, what are your thoughts on this menu now that we're taking the group into consideration? All right, you say you're gonna play music. We got the music, we got the music. Okay, based upon this group we're reaching out to, is this the appropriate music? So how many of us do that type of close reading when it comes to these interactions? And what would that look like? So I need everyone to give me an example of something that you could take into consideration that would make the event, the interaction, the whatever, more contextualized to those individuals to make them feel welcome. So for me, I'll go first on this one just so there's clarity of what I'm asking. Once again, for me, the number one thing would be in terms of food. When my wife and I, we invite someone over, we're gonna get that checklist of, and I know what my go-to dishes are, what I can cook very well. She knows what her go-to dishes are. So we're gonna ask the people. We're gonna be like, if you really want to experience our cooking, here's the things I cook the best. What do you think about this menu? And if they're good with that, we go with that. But if they say, well, I don't eat chicken, or so then we start to ask the type of questions of, okay, what are your dietary restrictions? What can we prepare for you? And we may even make some type of concession where, all right, since you know your thing and you make that good dish, make it and bring it with you. And we're sharing it also. That way everyone feels, no one feels left out in terms of the food. And so give me an example of something simple that you could do, or maybe you've even done this in terms of making sure that when you have great intention, that you also have great execution when it comes to making someone feel welcome.
It's going to sound like a broken record here because I'm going to go back to our exchange students and the daughters we've had from these other countries. We've had every religion every well-known religion come to our house. Buddhist, Muslim, Catholic, Jewish. We've had all of these different religions through exchange students come to our house. And we are very intentional on when they get there that we understand, we try to understand their culture, and we try to learn about it before they get there so that we can welcome them better in that way. Our goal, our behind the scene goal in this whole thing is Christianity. They go to church. They're required to go to church with us. They live our lives while they're here. Even though they're Buddhist, they're Muslim, they're whatever the case may be, they have to go with us to church. But we try to learn their culture as well. So we don't want it to feel like it's a one-way street. And that's what I think has gone over so well in our home. We are I don't want to say it. We're a rescue family, I guess you could say, for exchange students, because there are a lot of students that come into the United States, and the host family had great intentions, but there were clashes. It just didn't work out, and we are kind of the rescue house. They've come to know us as the organization has come to know us as just, they can go to the Staleys and they're going to accept them, and things are going to go well, and they always have, fortunately. But I think I'm gonna fall back to the last question a little bit, and something, Lindsay, you said that really kind of went by pretty quick is trust. You said there has to be trust, and when you're talking about that welcome versus, I forget the terms were, but being inviting versus welcoming. Yes. You can be inviting, but you're not truly welcomed until there's a trust factor there. And I think that's something that skipped over fairly quick. And I see it with my foreign daughters that have lived in our house. When we started communicating with some of them 6 months prior to them coming to our house, there was a trust factor that was built through the communication of that time. We had one, we've had several where we found out the day before, and you can see how they're kind of shy, not really shy, but they don't know what to expect until they trust. And I think somebody said something about, I'd rather have them tell me what I can do. Can I go into the refrigerator? Can I do this? Can I do that? And that's the very first thing we do. It's interesting that you said that, because we say, they come into our house and we say, our house is your house. You're welcome. But they don't know that until you tell them, you have to go to the refrigerator because we're not your maid, and everything in that refrigerator is yours. You can do it. Everything in your bedroom, you can rearrange it. So we give very detailed what you can and can't do. And that's just the start. And that's the start of the trust. So but I think trust is huge, just massive.
Theo, ever since you brought up a food example, that's the only thing I can think of. And now I'm also a little hungry, so thank you. But yeah, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about when I had just started at the church. There was another person who I worked closely with who she had a lot of dietary restrictions. And so whenever we had like a big leader event or really anything, because she had to live it, she would always be the reminder of, hey, is there a gluten-free option? Hey, is there this type of option? Or even she would be the one that would put on the form, do you have dietary restrictions or something of that sort? And so I think just to think a little bit more deeply about it, like because she was invited and welcomed to the table and had a voice at that and was able to voice something of that sort, I was able to receive that and then go, oh, I need to be thinking through this. I haven't experienced that, but I obviously want everybody to feel welcome, and I wasn't aware that I wasn't by not doing something as simple as food, but food's honestly the most important. And so because of that, I feel like I've been able to think through that more. And just, I have some good friends, Cassie, who have different dietary restrictions, and it's been fun just to not only just be like, hey, what can you eat, but almost be more like, hey, let's try new things together. Like this, I'm not totally used to this, but it doesn't always have to be this like you're helping and accommodating. It's like you can join in on the journey together, because you don't have it all figured out either, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that is a really cool thing. And I have a little bit of experience with this because my wife has a gluten allergy. She probably has celiac disease. She's just never gotten like you have to get tested and have like gluten in your system for a while. And it's like she doesn't want to go through all that. But she has a very negative reaction to gluten anytime she gets it. So we've had times where like people who know us well and know that Sarah has this have not served a gluten-free option. And it's like, that they didn't mean anything by it, but it says something, and it's frustrating, I guess, when that happens. If someone doesn't know that, that's one thing, and Sarah's fine with, we'll just bring some other kind of food. It's not a big deal. But yeah, if it's somebody that should know better, sometimes that can be frustrating. I guess one thing I would say on this is like, and this is something I struggle with mightily. So I am not an expert on this, but a lot of times when I meet someone for the first time, I will be like meeting them and they'll tell me their name and I'll be already thinking about what I'm going to say and I'm not like really listening, and I'll forget their name then when I go back. And so it's like just learning people's names and like how to pronounce their name correctly and just having that, making them feel important enough to know their name, I think is a big deal. Kind of a somewhat funny story on this. One time I was an MC at somebody's wedding and I did not go through and figure out the pronunciations of people's names before the wedding party came in. And these were not difficult names to pronounce. I just didn't, it was the one bridesmaid's last name. The last name looked like you pronounced it one way, but it just happened to be kind of an odd pronunciation. Anyways, I completely butchered it. And she was very gracious to me afterwards and came up and was like, my last name is really pronounced this way, but it's not a big deal. I felt horrible, but it's like, if I would have gone, the extra mile and like asked everybody how to pronounce their names beforehand, that would have been really simple and would have saved the egg on my face a little bit. So.
The church I was previously at, we had an event for single moms, and they claim it was one of the best events we ever planned. We had someone who decided he was passionate about it. We had probably 75 to 100 people volunteering. We had, activities for moms. We had classes for moms. We had food. We had music, you name it, we had it. We had an entire room. We had inflatables for kids and crafts and all kinds of stuff for their kids so we could take care of their kids while the moms were doing other stuff. And everybody was so excited. And we had 2 women show up. And They still claim it was one of the best things they ever planned and did, and everybody was so excited about. But they realized nobody bothered to say to any single women or single moms they knew, is this something you might need? Or is a Saturday morning a time that's good for you? Or is that maybe like one chunk of time during the week that you actually are home with your kids and you have time, or you want to sleep in that morning, or, so no one took their side or their perspective into the equation at all. We just all decided what we thought they needed and made sure that was there and made sure it was top notch and all of that stuff. But so it was like one of the best failures ever, like an epic failure.
Yeah, a couple things came to mind. Well, one, I have a few different dietary restrictions. And so I also am in that mindset when interacting or inviting people over, really fixating on making sure that food is available for them to be able to eat, because I've been in many situations where I wasn't able to eat anything. And so that sticks in your mind. But the other one that really so I interned for Beacon Health and Fitness in my undergrad, and me and one of the other interns, we noticed of the classes that were offered physical fitness, because that's one of the other things I really enjoy doing is exercising, and realized that there wasn't necessarily a class for individuals who suffer with autism or a similar disability. And so then we just started brainstorming and ended up developing a class, and it turned, and I was more on the logistics side of where can we put it and bringing in that. And then my fellow intern, she has a sibling who has autism. And so it's kind of going similar to what you're saying, Karen, is she had that experience. She knows based on her sibling what the class needed for it to be successful. And so collaborating and together we were able to see it be a really great class and provide a need that wasn't necessarily met. So yeah, that's the other thing that came to my mind.
I think as I've been listening to everybody's answers, it seems like a common thread is you're never going to know what to consider if you haven't been around the people you're considering or you're trying to consider. So like, I think and that goes right along with what Christina Cleveland was saying, but like Todd, you've had so many foreign exchange students in your house. Now it's probably just automatic for you, the little spiel that you have to go through when they get there. Whereas if my family, we've never had a foreign exchange student in our house. So if they got there, we would be leaving all types of stuff out that you would automatically say because you've experienced it before. Or everybody's talking about like food restrictions, dietary restrictions. If you live with a dietary restriction, you automatically know that. Cassie, the person the intern that had the sibling with autism, that's automatically a lens that they look through. Or like Karen, like you said, with single moms, if there would have been, maybe a single mom in the planning, she might have known. But it doesn't sound like that happened. That probably could have saved a lot of time and energy. But yeah, I think that goes right along with what Christina Cleveland was saying. Is like sometimes you just got to get out there and do it. And so yeah, that's like a scary thought, but it's also like a comforting thought of we can sit in here and discuss all the all the strategies and everything, but like at the end of the day, the most helpful thing might just be to get out there and do it.
I just had an incident. It wasn't too long ago where I had a barbecue, and I think, well, Cam, you may, and Karen, both Karens, you guys there's one in particular student. He's my baby, my big old tall baby. He just went to college, and he has became a vegetarian. And I'm normally, and like, we have barbecue, so I know who's coming, so I have things prepared for everybody. And then he came and he was like, "Mom, I don't eat meat," and I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, and which it sucked because there was nothing there for him to eat. Everything had meat in it. And it was like, "Next time, make some dip without meat in it." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't make dip without meat in it." But I need to, because he's always involved in everything that I do. So things need to, I need to accommodate that at times. So then that has me like, okay, when I have a barbecue, I'm going to make sure there is something that is meatless, and then there's a whole lot of fruit, because then my daughters played softball at Southside, and there was a young lady that had a gluten allergy. And you don't know about all this stuff, but until you step outside of your neighborhood, or I mean, until you step outside your neighborhood or step outside or see different things, you won't know. And is that a bad thing? I mean, like, we're taught, if you invite someone, that you should know who that person is, right? Like, you should know something about them. You know what I'm saying? Inviting someone to your church, inviting someone, there had to have been some sort of conversation with that person for you to invite them. Or are you just inviting them for pictures? Are you just inviting them because you need these people there so that you can collect this check? Are you just inviting them because you want to make yourself feel good about something? I mean, like, that's the stuff that is running through my head as I'm hearing all of this stuff. And like, Karen Grant, and Karen, Wes, Cassie, Aaron, I don't know y'all well enough to know what you eat and don't eat, but I do know well enough that I know I can get some fresh fruit and set it in separate bowls, and y'all gonna eat it. Todd, Theo, you know what I mean? I do know that well enough, and that it, like, I have been in, so I haven't been through every single thing, but I have been through so much stuff, like the good, the bad, the ugly. I have been around some of the smartest people PhDs, like masters. I've been around the smartest, richest people, and some of the brokest, not as smartest people. Like, I've been in these rooms, and I've been around so many different types of people here. Like, I know how I feel, when I go somewhere, and like, I just know how I feel. I don't want nobody to feel how I feel. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but I don't want nobody to feel how I have felt in certain situations. So Todd has a lot of foreign exchange students, and so what he knows a lot about the foreign exchange stuff. You know what I mean? Like, would you want to go outside your country and they treat you like crap? But they invited you. I just, so it took, for me with this, like, in this part, I've had a situation that was recent with Nicaire that I was like, oh shit, shoot, I know, but now, I mean, it's, my actions show different, you know what I mean? And that made me think, like, dang, it's more to it than just some chicken and some pork steaks or some Italian sausages. We need some beef, we need some chicken, and we need some fish, and we need some vegetables, and we like, and it's okay. We gonna make that work, you know?
Yeah, now that everybody's totally gonna go off this call and eat everything, and we're all gonna do it. You're gonna eat something. So, but I'm in another group that we're talking about race and just different things. And one of the gentlemen in the group always says the common denominator is just love. Really, really, it's just love. Love has its own language. And people can relate to the genuineness of your heart, even if they don't understand what you're saying, even if they're uncomfortable. If they see that you're making an honest effort to just treat them well, it'll warm a person's heart, even if you flubbed it all up. It's not cool. I like what Todd said. Failure is really the best learning tool, and I've had many of those. I was asked to host a exchange student, and really, Cam's words now are resonating in my head because I didn't step out and try. I had all these reasons because everybody said, "Oh, Miss West, you have all these kids. Oh, this would be perfect. Oh, go ahead. Could you do this? We know this is a good family." And I didn't step out. And I felt bad afterwards because the student they were going to give to me, my daughter and the young lady became friends. And she found out that the exchange student was having a horrible experience with the family she was with. And if I would have just been willing to step out and just, if I would have just made an effort and not been afraid that it was just going to be crazy and she's going to come in my house and think we're all crazy, she probably would have had a better experience because she would have felt the love in our home. And that would have been all that mattered. And so she was at this other house where they had all the amenities and everything looked good, but the key component wasn't there. They were just a really miserable family. So that hurt me afterwards. And I learned from that. I learned, don't be afraid of a challenge just because something's different or it's different from what you're accustomed to, or you don't know what to expect. Seize that moment because you don't know who you're helping. Who's going to be, who needs the love that you have to give. So I thought about one more thing that this group, the beauty of this group is that we didn't know, I knew some of the people on here, but I didn't know everybody. And it took, I think we've learned to respect each other. Even though Dan came up with these rules and values, we had to partner with that. We had to be willing to cross out of our own thoughts, out of our own little world. We've been in each other's worlds for 10 weeks almost. Glory to God. And really, I've enjoyed it. And everyone here, I liked the other week when Dan said, we're okay, it's just our culture is showing. And it should show. That's who we are, but we have to be willing to cross over and be intentional about accepting someone else's. So that I like that, welcoming and inviting and all that. Things we can do is just listen, have courage, plan, do some research, and be okay with failing a little bit and keep trying. So that's my thought on that.
All right. So what we're gonna do, I was torn between ending now. I know Dan normally likes to have a lightning round. We go a couple minutes a little bit late. So we're gonna have a 30-second lightning round because one thing I did that I had wanted to touch on, and it came up a lot in this last simple go around, especially when Karen was talking about not having a single mother on that committee and things of that nature when Aaron brought that up. I think it's important that if we have a particular heart for a particular culture, whatever that culture can be, whether it's the opposite sex, whether it's race, whether it's another religion, another age group, it's important that we have what I call a cultural ally, someone from that culture who can help us navigate that culture, who can tell us the do's and don'ts, to be a voice for that culture. And so I want everyone to take 25, 30 seconds right quick to talk about a particular culture they have a heart for and maybe someone you have a relationship that's helping you navigate that culture. So I'll go first, and not that I necessarily have a heart for white men per se, but my best friend Ryan, our relationship has been intentional in terms of him learning more about Black people, me learning more about white people, and walking it out. And so our relationship isn't simply, here's a relationship, and while we're at it, let's talk about race. That's a purpose of why we got into relationships. So he's what I would call a cultural ally, helping me navigate that culture and vice versa.
Well, I think you've probably heard my my heart, and not just my heart. I think it's my family's heart with these kids that are coming from other countries, and I think my heart's with the kid for sure, but my heart is with the parents of those kids, because I've got daughters, and if I always put myself in the place of those parents. If I were sending my kids overseas, they don't know me from anybody. And the trust that they put into me blindly brings tears to my eyes, and it puts a lot of it just really digs at me when I think about that.
I mean, 30 seconds. Okay. My groups would be high school students. And that's pretty much with my team, and I have a lot of good relationships with students, but within that is like having a heart for students to understand the greater church and understand that not everybody is going to act like them, think like them, look like them, and but I've noticed that I haven't been, like, as a leader, I haven't been doing anything to exemplify that. And so really, like, this group has been a really good start for me. It's not the end, it's just the beginning. So I guess this group has just, been a really good start for me.
So this may be a bit of a cop-out, and it might not fit perfectly with how you framed the question, Theo, but my wife has done an incredible job. I mean, she's just one of the smartest and just most amazing people I've ever met. But she has just done a really incredible job for me of showing me like a woman's perspective, and how as a man, a lot of times she'll call me out if I mansplain. There you go. That's one thing that she will not be shy about that, and it's like, that's a small example, but it's like, she's helped me see blind spots in a lot of areas. And that's one of the many things I'm grateful to her for.
I think over the last couple of years, I've developed a heart for the teenagers in South Bend, Black teenagers in South Bend, these girls and boys that I've met through Transformation Ministries. And I have a mentee who's she's pretty, for a teenager, she's pretty honest. We've got a great group of girls that we meet with every week. And so I learn from them every single time we're together. And my mentee's mom, she doesn't know this, but I look to learn from her and see where we're different and where we're alike, and how our mom hearts are so similar. We may do things or say things differently, but there's a lot that is alike. And so yeah, that's a place where I have found it. I found a love.
Yeah, this is hard to do in 30 seconds because the first one that came to mind is lower income families, and I say that because of my job, and the beauty of being able to develop relationships with a lot of different families. But even within that, as far as an ally within that, I have a couple coworkers who have been just an amazing resource and insight to living in poverty and coming out of poverty, and just the stories and wisdom. So
I would say Black young men. That's like my age, a little bit older than me, a little bit younger than me. One person, Christian Darden. Some of you guys know him. I live with him, and I've only known him for a few months now, but we're getting close pretty quick. And then I got another friend from Indiana Wesleyan named Jonathan, who was also in that cultural group.
Okay, I have an example of when I had to have an ally. My daughter went and studied, she studied abroad in South Korea, and I was terrified. I was just, that was so far away. And I thought of Todd and what he was saying, that people trust you like that. You know, I had to trust somebody like that. She was going, there was just some crazy circumstances at the last minute. And I don't know how I met this young lady, but she invited us to the South Korean church. I didn't know what they were saying, but I felt so connected to them. We had the, you know, you could wear the headphones. I felt Jesus in the South Korean church. And I felt the connectivity through Jesus. So it was so amazing. And then I ate some food that looked like I wasn't going to be able to eat it. And it was amazing. And it was just great. But my daughter, I had to know that it gave me a glimpse of where I was sending my daughter to. And it made me feel better. And just they didn't know us at all. And they invited us into the South Korean church and just opened arms. And I needed that, the young lady, as an ally, because I couldn't speak Korean. She had to call the family my daughter was staying with and translate some things, because I was on the phone, because she wasn't getting on the plane. And because I was terrified, but it was so sweet how she just took her time. And like Karen said, you can come from different cultures, different backgrounds, but the Jesus, the love, the Jesus they had and felt, I felt it too. And the motherhood, you know, we connected. She said, I'll take, you know, and I don't know how she said that she would take care of my daughter and that she would be in good hands. And I said, okay, I'm holding you to it. And my daughter was fine and had a wonderful experience, but she became my ally. She became in that situation. So I know that's a twist on the question, but I just wanted to share that experience, how I needed someone to help me. And it was, and they dove in, and I was so grateful. And my daughter will never forget that experience. So thanks again for what you do too, Todd, because I had to put my baby in somebody's hands too. So
Great stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it's been my pleasure to stand in for Dan. I was glad we were able to do this. It seemed pretty productive. So I hope and pray that we all have great days and great weeks until we meet again next week. Blessings, everyone. Good night, good night, good night. Yes.